I didn't have a ton of capital. I knew I needed to focus. I was looking for an audience that had money to spend on advertising and also needed expertise, because a lot of times when people are like, go to the blue ocean where it's not competitive, well, they don't need to spend a lot of money on experts. And I knew legal was highly competitive and it demanded expertise. So that's the main reason I went into legal.
Is scaling an agency about chasing every opportunity or honing in so sharply on one that your expertise becomes unstoppable? Chris Dreyer didn't just build rankings.io. He redefined the playbook for niche SEO success. His agency has dominated the legal marketing space, landing on the Inc. 5000 list for 7 years straight. And here's the kicker. Instead of casting a wide net, Chris doubled down, proving that niching down doesn't restrict growth, it supercharges it. Welcome to the DesignRush podcast. I'm your host, Kia Johnson, and today we're diving into the world of niching, innovative revenue models, and maximizing profitability. Chris's journey is a masterclass in how focus and expertise can redefine what it means to succeed in a competitive industry. In this episode, we're unpacking how Chris identified the most profitable segment of his client base and leveraged data to make strategic decisions, how value-based pricing can transform an agency's revenue model, and actionable strategies for improving profit margins while maintaining exceptional client satisfaction.
The moment that really resonates for me is I was listening to a Seth Godin podcast where he was talking about focus and expertise, and he actually used the phrasing niching up. And he talked about looking at the data. I looked at the data. I found that over 70% of our revenue is coming from less than 50% of our clientele. So it was just a clear path to focus.
Chris will challenge you to rethink how you approach growth, profitability, and positioning. He'll reveal why focusing on expertise is not just a strategy, but a necessity in today's AI-driven landscape.
AI is going to be able to regurgitate the generic, and you need to have that expertise. I would say that you're already losing business by not being an expert, whether it's from a pricing power perspective, a positioning perspective, eliminating waste.
This episode is packed with actionable insights from a leader who has mastered the art of scaling through specialization. Whether you're an agency owner, a business leader, or simply looking to level up, this conversation will leave you inspired and ready to implement change. Got a story worth sharing? Email us at spotlight@designrush.com. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights that will transform the way you grow your business. Let's dive in. Chris, it's an honor to have you on the show. Before we dive into our journey, let's kick things off with something fun, which is our rapid fire questions. These are like quick, no pressure questions, so I hope you're ready to jump in with me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Give one word that describes the power of niching in growing an agency.
One word: focus.
Describe the 3 biggest mistakes agencies make when trying to improve profit margin.
Pushing marketing and sales before product market fit, not understanding value and their actual ROI, and not utilizing international talent enough.
What is the proudest moment in your career?
Last year we threw a conference. I am not really a person that loves to be at center stage, but I interviewed Michael Phelps, and it was just an amazing conference for our business.
Amazing. And then what is the future of SEO in one phrase?
Search engine marketing, not SEO.
I love that one. Okay, so last question. What does it feel like to be the top ranked online poker player?
Well, it feels like I need to be at the table and get that dopamine hit. That's what it really feels like. I need to be at the table.
I'm hearing you 1,000%. All right, so that was pretty fun. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we're going to dig deeper into your journey now, Chris, and the incredible work that you've done with rankings.io, a top SEO agency for personal injury law firms. I mean, you've earned accolades like the Inc. 5000 list 7 years in a row. Well done. What I would like to know is what initially inspired you to focus on legal marketing?
I got to be transparent. I was bootstrapped. I didn't have a ton of capital. I knew I needed to focus. I was looking for an audience that had money to spend on advertising and also needed expertise, because a lot of times when people are like, go to the blue ocean where it's not competitive, well, they don't need to spend a lot of money on experts. And I knew legal was highly competitive and it demanded expertise. So that's the main reason I went into legal.
In terms of how that would actually shape or how that shaped your agency's vision, what would you say to that?
It kept me focused. I knew exactly who I was advertising to. Now there's defined sub niches, personal injury, criminal offense, family law that were more defined later with my agency, but overall, it just gave me a target of who to advertise and speak to.
And speaking to that, I mean, focusing on personal injury law firms, that's obviously given you an edge in delivering results that other agencies might struggle with.
Oh, absolutely. If you pull up Kantar, Vivek's top 100 spenders, 95 of them are going to be personal injury law firms.
All right, so going to my next question, Chris, niching can feel like a very risky move for many agencies, but rankings.io has actually demonstrated the power of narrowing that focus. What would you say is the pivotal moment that led you to specialize exclusively in personal injury law firms?
I'd been wanting to do it, but the moment that really resonates for me is I was listening to a Seth Godin podcast where he was talking about focus and expertise, and he actually used the phrasing niching up, and he talked about looking at the data. I looked at the data. I found that over 70% of our revenue is coming from less than 50% of our clientele. So it was just a clear path to focus. Now, since then, we've kind of expanded out and we help all areas of the law, but still 85-90% of our revenue is PI.
What would you say is the advice that you would give to agencies that are actually, hesitant to niche down, mostly because of fears of actually limiting their potential market?
Well, today with AI, you're going to have to, because you need to have a deeper understanding, and it's going to come down to, because AI is going to be able to regurgitate the generic, and you need to have that expertise. I would say that you're already losing business by not being an expert, whether it's from a pricing power perspective, a positioning perspective, eliminating waste. You've got so many processes that leads to operational complexity that to look at it. But I always tell everyone, don't start with niching, start going broad. Work with a lot of industries, determine who you're the right fit for, who you like working with, who you get the best results for, and then niche down. I think it's a mistake. A lot of coaches and consultants talk about niching from the beginning, but you need to have all these opportunities to understand where your focus should be.
People always tend to think, or at least that there's sometimes this negative connotation when it comes to being a jack of all trades. But in essence, as you're saying, if you're trying to find out what it is that you're specializing in, initially when you're starting, you need to be that jack of all trades, right?
Absolutely. And I think that's a huge problem with the education system in America, is like you go and you pick this career path and then you decide that you don't like it. And then it's like, well, now I'm years away from pursuing this other career. So I think that's a problem out of the gate, is they kind of force you to niche or to focus. And allowing you to have these experiences, understands like who the individual that you like to work with, because you need that purpose, passion, and profit on the Venn diagram right in the middle. It's not just about where you can get profit, but it's like, who do you enjoy working with? I'll give you an example from my end. In my experience, not all criminal defense attorneys, my values don't align perfectly with many of them. So we don't work with as many, and that's just me, and that's my own values, and
yes.
So that's where we're at.
And in terms of other agencies that have actually been able to grow by niching specifically, do you have any examples that you can share with us today?
There's several that come to mind. Let's see here. Venvio is one. They specialize in building materials marketing. There's Cardinal Digital Marketing that specializes in healthcare. Blue Corona was really big in home services. There's other in the legal vertical. I think that even some of the big ones, like you take Scorpion, they started off in legal. Now they've raised capital or got involved with private equity, and they've done these acquisitions for home services. So they're very vertical specialized, even though they don't work with just one niche. So I think it's the future. It's anyone can pop into these generative engines and get information from a basic perspective. So it's just going to force even extreme expertise.
So in terms of my next question, Chris, I want to actually, look a little bit more at rankings.io.
Yeah.
Many agencies actually struggle to like balance, specialization with the need to adapt to market trends. So I would love to know, how do you stay agile and innovative within a niche while maintaining your focus?
Oh, really good question. So the biggest thing is a direct feedback loop from the individuals that you work with, that your clients. I do it from a number of ways. First is I have a podcast. It's the Personal Injury Mastermind. So I'm interviewing the top personal injury attorneys every week to understand their pains and understand where the opportunities are. And we also survey our clients. We survey our employees. So we're constantly getting a feedback loop of, what products do you want us to launch? What do you love that we do? What do you dislike, wish we would stop doing? What do you wish we would do more of? And we're constantly doing that.
The market is changing and evolving all the time, and everything is a learning process. So if it is that, the customer today is not the customer tomorrow, you would need to be able to be in touch with that all the time. So the feedback loops example that you're using right now, I think, is actually one of the most important things that you can do for your business. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just briefly on that, and I know we're going to transition. So take COVID that hit. If you were a restaurant-based digital agency, you could proactively advise your restaurants on how to succeed during this very challenging moment. Maybe it's implementing DoorDash and Grubhub, and being tech-enabled, doing the QR codes. If you weren't specialized in the restaurants, maybe those things you would eventually learn them, but maybe you wouldn't be able to proactively guide your clientele. So I think there's a lot of times people talk about industry risk, but I think it's even understanding how to succeed during downturns and challenges.
So true. It actually, there was a question that I actually wanted to ask you in terms of just like, let's say I'm running an agency. It's got a general focus on digital marketing for small businesses, and basically the steps that you would recommend to, narrow our focus as a business and then establish ourselves as leaders in a specific nation. And it's kind of touching on what you've just said now. So I think if you could maybe expand on that, that would be amazing.
When you do specialize, there's a natural perception of expertise. I mean, we the easiest example is a general practice doctor versus a brain surgeon. You would just assume that the brain surgeon is better, even without any evidence of that, right? So that's the first point. The second is when you specialize, you'll have specific case studies. People want to know that you've helped other individuals like themselves. So if they see case studies of, for example, for us, personal injury attorneys, they're more likely, as opposed to a home services or a physician case study, it's not as aligned, it's not as specific. But all the things when it comes to case study, experience, social awards, case studies, testimonials, all of that kind of go hand in hand, and that perception of expertise, reviews, really guarding your reputation with excellent client service. All those things can just be very pivotal in establishing yourself as an authority.
Value-based pricing has actually become a buzzword in agency strategy, right? But few implement it effectively. So I would love for you to actually explain what value-based pricing truly means in today's market.
The first thing I would tell everyone is go read Alan Weiss's book, Value-Based Fees, because he's going to do a much better explanation of this. But in the beginning, most agencies are selling capacity. They're either selling hours or units, selling, the number of backlinks. Eventually, when you start to understand the value that you provide and respect your client, then you can start charging based upon that. And I'll give you a perfect example. You could have an identical service offering, but it would be more expensive for Los Angeles than it would be, say, Marion, Illinois, because it's worth more for Los Angeles. Because if you can generate cases in Los Angeles, those cases are worth more because they cost more to acquire than it is in Marion. So you could take the exact same scope and charge more for Los Angeles. The other thing is, you get away from trading your time for money, right? It all comes down to an ROI, and it's understanding and learning those metrics. I wish that I would have been more attuned to capturing that data at the beginning. It would have transitioned our agency forward much more quickly. Getting connected to CRMs, understanding how much money they're actually making. That also helps you from a retention perspective, because all us SEO nerds, we look at Ahrefs and SEMrush and what have you, and we see, oh, their organic traffic's crushing it. But if we don't have access to their CRM and we don't see that they're signing clients, it doesn't matter. So if you're tied to the profit, it's just a recipe for success.
It really is about narrowing that focus, right? And just focus and keep that focus going. In terms of this approach, I mean, how has it transformed your agency's revenue model, would you say?
I'll give you an example. There's a lot to this. Okay, so now I know what the average case acquisition cost is, say in California, where it's $5,000 to $10,000 to acquire a case, versus in the Midwest it might be $2,000, or in Florida it might be $4,000. So when we're going to propose a budget for pay-per-click or paid social or SEO or what have you, it helps us scope the project more accurately. You can't deliver the same type of results for a Los Angeles auto accident attorney if they have no backlinks and no presence. You're just not going to do it. You have to deviate and change your strategy. You may have to go after premises liability or some other area. So it's really understanding those economies. I know some of the audience, probably their egos say, oh, I can do auto for low, and no, you can't. But that's just the types of things that come with it, is a true understanding of the economies. Right now, for example, we work with 160 personal injury law firms, many of which have 10 to $20 million annual budgets, and we have an extreme amount of data where we understand exactly what it costs to acquire these cases and what they're worth, even from an average fee perspective. So those are the types of things that once you really understand business owner to business owner, what the win-win scenario is, that will help you price accordingly.
Do you have any specific examples pertaining to those actual values and those actual estimates, or is it would be on a case-by-case scenario, right?
Yeah, I'll give you nationwide. So take auto, for example. If the attorney's average fees are, less than $10,000, they're not doing a good job of working up the case. If it's 10 to 15, it's average, it's okay. 15 to 20 is good. Above 20 is phenomenal, right? So in that scenario, if the attorney isn't working up the case, they're not getting, the medical and all that, everything, correctly, even filing for litigation as opposed to just doing pre-lit, you have to acquire more cases, right? So if I'm charging $5,000, they need two cases, to make any money. If I got them one case for $5,000 and their average fee is 10, they're only making $5,000. But imagine the same scenario where that individual's getting $25,000 for their average fees. Now it's 5 to 1. So it all, and that's why there has to be scrutinization. You have to scrutinize even the sales and the intake. So we will secret shop our prospects to see if they have good intake. We'll coach them up there, because if I'm generating a lot of leads, but they're not closing them, or their criteria is too strict, or their reputation suffers, at the end of the day, they're going to fire me, and they're going to blame the marketing agency. But at the end of the day, it's more about them and accountability. But so we have an internal process that we call teach our clients not to be crazy. And this is true. And it's, clients become crazy when expectations aren't set and you don't proactively help them. How long does it take to get results? What's your process here? How do I do these things? And it's just the nature of the beast that you have to, at the end of the day, it's not just delivering SEO and ranking. That is a small fraction of it. It's helping them make money. If you have a law firm that's making less than $1 million a year in fees, they may not be a good business owner, or they may be very new. That's the reality, right? So when you start to target these individuals that make 3 to 5 million or more, 8 figures, 9 figures, they're typically surrounded by more experts, and they have more channels that are producing leads, and they understand the game. They understand the value of advertising. So first, you want to seek prospects that understand the value of marketing, as opposed to, I got to do this, or what's your fee? It's $5,000. It's all in respect to what it can deliver, right? If it doesn't matter, if you could pay $1 to make 2, you're going to do that all day. So it starts with those types of individuals. How do you identify the best clients, and how do you determine who is the right fit? So we do it a number of ways. The first thing is we have mandatory fields on our contact form that they are required to list their previous year's revenue. We also enrich all of our data from a prospecting perspective. We use a third party to enrich our data with employee headcount and a blend of all Apollo and Zoom info and all of that. So we have a great understanding of, are they making money? What's their headcount look like? And then in the pre-qualification time during the conversation, we ask them, what other marketing channels are you using? How many cases are you signing up? What's an average case worth? And we just want to make sure that they're the right fit. So that really is heavily loaded on the front end. I'll give you something that changed for me. This was a huge adjustment. In the past, I would get a lead from, say, a Los Angeles personal injury attorney, and I would quote the market, 20, 30, 40, 50K a month. But here's the deal. If it's a solo practitioner, they can't afford that. So once I started understanding, this firm made $3 million last year, you can't go after auto. Like, let's have that conversation. Like, are you willing to delay that and defer that, and then maybe bring it back? There are circumstances like maybe we could go after Uber, Lyft, or subsets of auto, but like the main head term, car accident lawyer, you're not going to rank against Sweet James that's spending $100 million a year. Maybe that's not a perfect example. Maybe it's a Wilshire or a Farah, but you get my point, or Jacoby. But it's quoting based upon where they're at and really understanding them. Also, I'll tell you this too. Let me one other thing is, if you're only doing inbound marketing, so I'm advertising, I'm doing social, I'm doing Google ads, I'm doing all these things, I am receiving all the leads, right? And they're going to vary. You're going to have, this guy made $1 million this last year, this guy made 8, this guy made 20. Versus when you're proactively hunting and doing account-based marketing, you can control who your targets are and who the right fit is, and do they have an understanding of marketing. So all those things play into there's a lot more to this, but all those play into it.
What are your top 3 tips for agencies looking to enhance profit margins without sacrificing, like client satisfaction?
The first one is, I like to segment client satisfaction with delivery. And I feel like when you have the person that's doing the work also communicating with the client, they constantly have their head down doing the work, and they don't have their head up looking for opportunities and leading. So for us, we have account management that just does the strategy and client communication separate from our operations and delivery. I feel that's a very strong strategy or method to implement for most agencies. Second one, I would say, is to eliminate waste. Be relentless on this. We love our subscriptions to Ahrefs, SEMrush, and all the tools and all the gadgets. And even unfortunately, there's scenarios where you hire individuals and you're overstaffed, or you don't need that individual, and you should cut them. And I know that sounds ruthless, but I want everyone to remember, it is not the employer's responsibility to make the employee indispensable. It's their responsibility. And a lot of times these employees get left behind by AI and things like that, versus your executives that are constantly getting mentored and coached and learning the new thing, that are that are kind of rising with the agency. So you got to make yourself indispensable. So eliminate waste. That could be staffs, that could be subscriptions, segment client satisfaction and delivery, and then charge what you're worth. You should never undercharge. It's a tremendous issue, a huge issue, because you won't have the ability to truly deliver value. You need to charge what you're worth. You need to understand that. You need to constantly raise your fees. Look, I have in my inbox an email from Smith AI and from, I think, Disney or Netflix, one of those, that does a price increase letter. Hey, we reinvested on this and this. Your new price is this. How many of us have the same clients for 3 or 4 years and they're still paying the same fee? Well, every year our costs increase, so our profit decreases. We need to, if you're delivering value to those clients, it's gonna help you. So increase your fees, charge what you're worth, eliminate waste, segment client satisfaction with communication and delivery. I would say those are 3 big ones.
From the experience that I've had with many different businesses, is that they tend to have this thing of entering into the market, and not charging what they are worth and trying to almost like undercut the next guy. And sometimes you see that working for a very short time, and then in the long term, you'll actually notice that, they'll fall away, or it catches up with them eventually. So I would say it's a very tricky area. I mean, how do you just go in, especially if you're an agency starting up and going like, okay, this is my worth and this is what I'm charging?
There's a Seth Godin quote: "The problem with the race to the bottom is you just might win. You keep cutting your fees, you eventually have no profit, no ability to deliver value." It's one of the first things that inexperienced business owners do is, oh, they're charging 5, I'm going to charge 4. Well, you're the opposite, which would be significantly better, is how can I deliver more value to justify a price increase? So we see this right now in the SEO space. All these poor, substandard SEO agencies. Oh, you're charging 2,000, I'm going to charge 1,000. You charging 1,000, I'm going to charge 500. Now you got the Fiverr giggers and things like that. I mean, it's just a race to the bottom, and these agencies are not perceived as experts. They're never going to have the ability to charge larger retainers. It also, if you're trying to make any money, and your retainer's $500, I get 10 clients, I'm making 5,000. Well, I get one client at 5,000, I make the same amount. It's a lot less work too, from a staffing perspective. They have to get away from that. They have to understand their value. They have to think more about, how can I be a person, an agency of value? That's what they have to think.
Mm. And I think the risk in then charging, or undercutting the price of what your actual worth is, or as you mentioned before, now most of these agencies they don't have that expertise, but then the bar's been set, so it does make it quite hard for either the next agency owner, or even for yourself. If you are a business who is repeatable, but now you're a bit scared and you're kind of entering the market this way, and then you've set the standard for that, and now you're stuck there, because how do you then go and request from your clients, okay, I need to scale this up, I need to also set my boundaries, and
yeah. I mean, if you start it with a retainer at 1,000, it's going to be tough to grow it to 10. But if you started at 10, might be a little bit easier to grow it to 15 or 20. There's a lot to that. So completely agree.
Chris, I want to move our focus a little bit now, taking a look at, automation, which is, a powerful tool for reducing costs. Agencies do often struggle with implementation. You were talking earlier about, staff members themselves, and possibly you even having to sort of, cut your ties and cut that cost of someone who's not being proactive in terms of just the way AI is evolving, and getting with the program, itself. But what would you say is your approach to identifying, processes that can be streamlined without actually compromising the human touch? Because this, I find, is also kind of like this gray sort of very tricky area. There's automation and it's a support system, but it shouldn't also be something that must be overutilized as well.
Yeah, you need to have individuals that own these areas, right? As opposed to people sprinkling and thinking about it. So you give, say, your VP of operations the ability to create automation through ClickUp, or or utilize AI for content. There's a ton. Like when AI was just coming out and it was the talk, like we're testing Neuralink and Surfer and Jasper and all of them, literally all of them. And then, creating our own GPTs and our own prompts and things like that. So you have to experiment and iterate, but someone has to own those initiatives. In larger organizations, that would a lot of times be the CTO, right? They would really own that. There's kind of this, this arc that private equity looks at. It's like, first you get product market fit, you're one channel and one service, and then you kind of grow, and then you're one channel, multiple services, or multiple channel, one service. There's these labor type advantages. Eventually you start becoming tech enabled. It's kind of the arc that occurs, because at the end of the day, we're talking about leverage, and labor-based leverage is people. That's where you get advantage. One thing that we didn't talk about is international hires, right? So there's pricing arbitrage advantages. There's even pricing arbitrage advantages in the Midwest as opposed to California, like what I can pay for labor. So if I'm paying, 3 developers, the same amount as one, I in theory, 3 times the amount of capacity. Now, we do know that there's these A+ superstars that are worth 10 employees, but I'm just saying, as an average, there's some advantages there. So that's what we're talking about, is leverage. And at the end of the day, there's so much tech out there. It can really help you reduce that headcount, lead to profitability, and streamline your operations.
Generative AI, it's revolutionizing marketing, but what would you feel are the sort of major ways that you are leveraging AI at rankings.io to enhance efficiency and also deliver better results for your clients?
I mean, the big 3 that I wrote, kind of thought about is content first. I mean, that's one of the biggest delivery costs that we have. So we're utilizing it more in content, from a content calendar perspective, or even an outline perspective. Data analysis, feeding it data and having it analyze data. And then also contracts. I'll give you an example. Literally yesterday, I needed to crank out an updated paid social contract, an SOW. I had a PPC management. So I fed it my PPC management statement of work. I gave it a very specific prompt, and I said, now create this for a paid social. And then I gave it a prompt of what I wanted it to include. And it was like 95% there, but it saved me a ton of time. It allowed me, something that I could update off of, as opposed to just trying to do that from scratch.
You were talking about, the content calendar data analysis and contracts just in terms of rankings.io, but what would you say are the top 3 actionable AI strategies that you'd recommend to other agencies that are looking to scale in 2025? Or would these 3 that you just mentioned be those that you would recommend?
It really depends on what type of agency you are, what your offer is. I mean, if you're going to be the McKinsey of AI and legal, how they're utilizing it's going to be completely different. Maybe SWOT analysis and all the stuff from the Scaling Up book. Maybe you feed it into that. It's really, if you're talking an SEO agency, it's content for sure. That's going to be a huge focus. If you're a data analytics, it's going to be feeding data into it. So it really depends on the type of agency.
What qualities or practices do you believe set agencies apart as true strategic partners for businesses, especially in highly competitive industries like legal marketing?
I think of the phrasing and the words that are used, partner versus vendor. When people are referring to us as a vendor, that's not who we want to work with, because a vendor is an order taker. A partner is a leader. It's a peer. So, if you're leading out ahead, you're going to have followers. If you're copying your competitors, then you're going to be behind someone. So it comes down to those words, partner versus vendor, leader versus order taker. Coincidentally, from a client service perspective, that's where we tend to see the most issues are people that don't succeed from an account management perspective, or those individuals that are just order takers from the clients, because look, the clients aren't always right. And they may ask us to do something that isn't in their best interest. And we need to have the confidence and expertise to push back in a professional manner to guide them. You know, we've got one firm, I'm not going to name where, but they won't allow us, who knows how long this is going to be, from an agency client perspective, won't allow us to lead and do refer to us as vendor. You know, use that phrasing. Had a book that talked about their vendors, and they struggle with the vendors not coming with them with the ideas, but it's because of how they're treating the relationship. If you allow the experts to be experts and lead, then you will get that benefit.
What would you say then you think agency leaders actually need to empower, like the next bold move?
Well, immediately where my mind went is Monish Pabrai has this book called The Dondo Investor, and it talks about heads I win, tails I don't lose. And what it means is you have these bets where there's these asynchronous bets where you can win a huge opportunity, but your downside is very low. So I'll give you a perfect example. If you're a new agency owner, you send out a huge retainer, your upside's very high. Your downside is you just don't win the bid. You don't win the RFP. So they need to take more of those types of gambles. And that can apply to many areas. You know, if you go in and you want to advertise on Facebook and you go in with let's say you've saved some money, right? $10,000. Let's experiment with this channel, and okay, versus 100,000. You know, if you lose 100, but you've got that set aside, and it's not going to cripple you, you may generate a whole new pipeline. But if you just do the 10,000, you may not find and have enough data to see if it works. So look for those asynchronous opportunities that, you know, heads I win, tails I don't lose.
Absolutely loving that. Chris, you know, as someone who's built a thriving agency in such a specialized field, you've clearly mastered the art of adapting to challenges and seizing opportunities. I mean, just speaking to the advice that you were giving earlier, looking ahead, what do you believe will be the biggest opportunity or challenge for agencies in 2025?
This is a really tough one. I would say the biggest opportunity is AI. We're talking a lot about that. And a lot of people are talking about it. And it makes me, you know, it goes back to we got all these theories, got this vision, like execute on it, like start implementing it, start using it. Don't just think about it. So that's the biggest opportunity, is to start implementing AI in your agency and use it.
Chris, this has been an absolutely insightful conversation. You know, your journey with rankings.io, your ability to break down complex strategies into actionable steps. It's been very inspiring. And you've just got a fantastic way of looking at things and appreciating every bit of advice, of knowledge that you've been sharing here today. So thank you so much for sharing this with us, and for your passion for helping others scale and succeed. It's been really great having you with us on the show today.
Thanks for having me. Thank you so much.
Curious about what top brands look for when choosing an agency? Tune into our latest episodes where we reveal the decision-making secrets of leading brands. Subscribe to the DesignRush podcast and stay ahead of the competition.